Find somebody else. Oh my God! It's a good thing you didn't start yet.
Okay, I think it's starting now. Well, welcome back, everyone, to Second Breakfast. We are here for our continued house. Oh, Maggie's making a drink in the background. Oh, my God. We're here for our continuing House of the Dragon coverage. We're talking about episode 5 this week. It's me. It's Maggie. What sort of drink did you?
It's you and I. Maggie's out of it.
Well,
She's done.
I was gonna give you, mysterious guest, a special introduction. We have with us today, it's not just me and Maggie, we have returning TikTok star Tristan. We posted a clip of, he made this great point last week on the show, and I cut it into a little reel. Put it on Instagram, it performed, nothing performs well on Instagram. Nope. It got like 600 views, which, in any other era of history except this one would be incredibly impressive. So then I posted it on TikTok, and TikTok star Tristan brought in 88,000 views.
Oh, jeez.
So thank you for fitting us into your busy television schedule.
That's awesome. I can't believe that it's performing like that. Mm-hmm. I read a couple of the comments. It was funny. Some people were like, well, it's actually only a coincidence because all of the names have similar phonemes. Relax, all right? Uh-huh. Yeah, that's true. And obviously it wasn't. It's sort of just a fun coincidence there. But let's go ahead and flex those imagination muscles, all right?
Yeah.
Well, also, another commenter was like, just let people have fun. And I was like, thank you.
That's so funny. But I will continue to make non-obvious, potentially stupid references like this.
Perfect.
Throughout the entirety of my run on this series. So,
fantastic.
If listeners at home want to go check out that TikTok, we are at Second Breakfast Pod everywhere. I would warn you against reading all of the comments because someone in there just completely spoiled what happens to Rhaenyra.
Yeah, tread
it was
lightly.
really good.
So now Maggie and I know how. Well, I guess all three of us know how the fucking show ends.
I mean, but I'm hoping. Well, maybe it's a different Rhaenyra. Probably not. But also, there's
maybe a different one.
Well, there are lots of Daenerys.
It's the other House of the Dragon.
I just mean, listen. So Cam and I were saying, there's a lot that has to happen in between. We don't know. It's fine, but it is dangerous territory to tread.
I made fun of her when she voiced this opinion. So before we jump into,
you said it. You said
Maggie,
it.
Before we jump into this week's episode. We have a couple thoughts from Brother Samron, talking some great observations about last week's episode that I wanted to sort of fold into the discussion before we jumped into this, which is the Green Wedding episode we're going to talk about. So discussing last week, Brother Samron was talking about our point about Daemon. We talked about Daemon a lot and impotence and whether or not he was trying to frame Rhaenyra with the page, seeing them go into the brothel together.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
And Brother Samron pointed out that Daemon is the one who took off Rhaenyra's hood, which means he wanted her to be noticed. Also, the fact that he left her that little map of how to get out of her chambers and meet him and then escape the castle together, that means he also knows the way into her room. So that might end up being important later.
Fun. That's a good point.
Well, see, I was worried about that the entire time last episode because I was literally Game of Thrones style, like fearing that they would be in the middle of this, kind of nice sex scene between the two characters that we like. It looks, for Game of Thrones, it's like this is the way it's supposed to go. This is like this
everyone's consenting, no one's related.
This is utopia, right? Exactly. That we know of, right?
Yeah.
Criston Cole, secret Targaryen, confirmed. But no, like the whole time I was like, Daemon's definitely gonna just come in because he has this map and just run Criston Cole through.
No,
While I was just waiting for like Gone Girl style, dead in the middle of the city. So that's what I was dreading the entire time. So I'm really glad that didn't happen. Of course, in hindsight, after this week, maybe I wish it would have.
Just give that guy a quick ending.
Salmon also pointed out that Alicent, as of last week, never mind her advancement in the game this week, Alicent stopped picking her fingernails.
Oh.
Which means she is settling in and sort of leveling up in this world.
Good for her.
Also, we discussed the dragon torches that Rhaenyra sees when she's out on the town with Uncle Daemon. And Samron was interpreting these as Rhaenyra seeing fire for the first time as light. seeing the symbology of her house and how the dragons gave, almost metaphorically, illumination to this dark city.
Interesting. I like that.
Which I thought was farther than I was able to get on
Yeah.
Symbology of that last week.
No, I like that. That's really cool.
Also,
for new listeners, Brother Samron is Cam's twin.
Yeah.
Sam, his sister Sam. We just call her Brother Samron.
We've just been saying a nickname for 2 years and we can't stop doing it now.
It's Cam's twin. Anyway.
Also, the total disrespect of Daemon calling the Iron Throne a chair, which we didn't bring up.
I forgot about that. That was
Add
pretty
it to
funny.
The chair. And the sort of a deeper dive on Daemon's multiple blunders in a brothel. I was talking this out with her on the phone, and we realized that Daemon knew that this trick would work of bringing Rhaenyra to the brothel and then someone noticing her and that becoming a scandal. He knew that would work because last time he started shit in a brothel was when he was roasting the dead baby.
That's true.
And so this is sort of him doubling down and consciously weaponizing that mistake, and so further mocking Viserys by defaming both of his children in a brothel.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't thought about the connection to what was the baby's name?
I don't know.
Not Bayorn.
Wow.
Baelor.
That was that a barbarian reference?
No, but that's good.
Oh, that was such a good movie.
That was good.
Yeah, so of course we are here for We Light the Way, which is the 5th episode of Season 1 of House of the Dragon. And the big thing that happens this week is what is being called online the Green Wedding.
Which I like.
What did we think of the episode?
I mean, awesome. It was weird because it felt like a bit of a slowdown until the very end. I was like, okay, we're like on a boat. Okay, there's a marriage. Okay. But then it didn't surprise me at the end because at this point we're trained to, in a wedding at Westeros, something bad is going to happen. But it seemed like it slowed down quite a bit before ramping back up, which I think makes the ending scene more effective.
Sure. Tristan?
Yeah. I mean, ill portents, right? I mean, it feels so. Prior to this episode, and damn it, they did the same thing the Game of Thrones did to me. Before spoilers, before Ned died, and it feels like the story is going in a certain direction, and it's like, okay, all of our pieces are in place. We kind of know who we like and who we don't like. We sort of have a feel for who these characters are and everything, and then and now we're veering off like what we feel like should happen, like the correct way, right? Our characters have pretty much found success in everything that they've been doing so far. I mean, arguably Viserys has, some mishaps and like handling things the way that he wants them to go, but ultimately the thing gets done, right? Daemon has always, he's sort of like a Loki character throughout Loki, the Norse god, not Loki as in under the radar. Like he's just sort of been this trickster fellow. Oh, he gets into mischief and causes shit for everybody, but can occasionally do some cool stuff like get rid of the crab feeder, but ultimately hasn't been super, super harmful. And now things are starting to go off the deep end, right? We've seen the through line of him not being able to go past that line of no return thoroughly broken in this episode, if that was ever still in question. And ultimately with Criston Cole literally losing it the way that he did. I mean, the gloves are now off. Things are slowly. Things have quickly gone off the rails now that we see how dire Viserys' situation is, and how all of the other characters who have their own machinations are starting to rise to prominence, and they are now playing the Game of Thrones along with everybody else. So I think things are really taking off next episode.
And well. Before we jump into Criston, because I know, Tristan, you have thoughts on him. I thought this episode, like you both kind of observed, this was a slower episode for the most part. Last week we discussed the tighter focus that the episodes have gotten on character drama instead of battle and action scenes, which feels like an emphasis on good writing versus good budget. And this episode felt like the second half of the couplet that was opened last week, where it's really all just dialogue and character development, specifically on Criston Cole and Laenor Velaryon. But then at the end of the episode, of course, all of that pays off very, very efficiently with a moment of classic Game of Thrones action. And to the point of this being just great character drama, the tensest moment for me was not the brutal murder that ends this episode. It was a woman entering a room wearing green and a guy accidentally confessing to the wrong crime.
Oh, I loved that.
I was just like, Cam and I both kind of realized at the same time what he was about to do, and we were like, no, it's just so painful and so stupid.
And there is this dalliance in any sort of Westerosi show now. There's an expectation about weddings. It's almost like they created this trope. It's not even refreshing a trope or a cliche.
No, because it's not anywhere else.
This is the house that Game of Thrones built. But now there are expectations, and I was so impressed when they pivoted away from showing us Alicent and Viserys' wedding earlier on this season.
Right.
I had no idea what to expect here because we knew there was going to be a royal wedding this week. And it's such a tough proposition. Do you lean into callbacks and sort of cyclical storytelling of, oh shit, the weddings always go bad here? Or do you cut it out altogether? I didn't know if we were going to see all of the dressing and character work around the wedding, but not the event itself. Doing a wedding in a Game of Thrones show, do you lean into callbacks or do you cut around the wedding? And there were echoes of previous big bad weddings in this one. We got a character named Joffrey dying in King's Landing. That's an echo back to what was called the Purple Wedding in season 4.
That death is so good.
And then, of course, there's the Red Wedding in season 3. And like that scene, in this episode, we have an ominous and dimly lit indoor feast with slowly building freaky music, with a marriage to a house that was previously snubbed for a much better marriage.
Yes, right.
So, and Corlys has been aggrieved since the pilot. So we didn't know if he was in that Walder Frey situation.
Right.
And I think the great pivot that this show made in the finale of this episode was that the central drama, the central combatants of this little death match were not in the wedding party.
Right.
But we were still so invested. It didn't feel like a fake out. It didn't feel cheap.
No, right. It felt fresh, but also familiar at the same time. It was pretty impressive. It was an impressive balance.
And Tristan, you've said that Criston Cole is one of your favorite characters, I think.
Well, was. And so I'll dive into that a little bit then. Well, first of all, with generally with the Red Wedding question, or the Westerosi Game of Thrones wedding question, at a certain point maybe it feels too much like a trope, but then if you really zoom out and get some perspective on like the world that we're in right now, these in like tournaments are some of the only times that we get all of these schemers and players in the same place at the same time, and they can take advantage of the chaos, right? These movers and shakers can actually sort of have an impact on the global or countrywide politics in this moment. So it makes sense as to why these crazy things happen here, because this is the exigence for somebody who wants to actually do it and get some level of anonymity, because who do you point to? Obviously we know Criston Cole did this one, but generally as to why the weddings are such crazy events is because it's like one of the few opportunities whenever everyone's all in the same place, and if somebody has a target, they're there for the taking, But for Criston Cole particularly, I really liked him initially because we really haven't seen a pure knight before, right? Somebody who actually was there for the right reasons, in the Kingsguard, doesn't really have any other schemes cooking, literally just wants to be there for the honor and likes the princess, so wants to be there to protect her. She literally said it earlier on in this episode where she was like, you are my white knight. Now, it's a little naive, right? And maybe I'm, to blame, too, for allowing myself to like him like that, because obviously something was going to go wrong somewhere, right? But you know, it was nice to see that there was some modicum of honor from him in this world. It was nice to have a protector we knew that Rhaenyra could trust. And then last week happened, and I figured there was going to be some fallout there of someone catching feelings, and lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. I mean, he literally says, "So you want me to be your whore?" You know, he's sullied in his words, sullied his white cloak, right? He's broken his oath. He's living a lie at this point in time now by continuing to be in the Kingsguard. So he's like, okay, how do we avoid this? We run away to where it doesn't matter at all. And I was like, okay, well, I liked you initially. Now you're clearly just a moron if you think that it's that simple.
Right. It's a
like,
pretty dramatic choice. And
she's the heir to the throne. Is she gonna? She's gonna leave.
Right.
Yeah, they're gonna come after her and kill her. Like, I don't know why you think that's gonna work. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, that it irritated me on a character level for him this episode because, you know, I guess maybe we just didn't see enough of him before because he was just doing his duty, but he's very clearly dumb.
Yeah.
Right. And you know, for him, I'm not sure what made him fly off the handle. I mean, maybe he just, I understand that there was parity between he called himself the Knight of Kisses. I don't know his name.
Joffrey.
Joffrey
okay.
Lonmouth.
Okay. so you know, Laenor's consort, essentially. I know that they were essentially in the same position, and that's why he was able to recognize that Criston Cole was feeling the same way, because he saw mirrored in him what he was feeling himself. And then coming over there and I guess, you know, poking the bear, little did he know, and sort of threatening him with that was you know, what pushed him over the edge, really. But it was just such a quick character turn. Right, that I wish that maybe that one had developed a little further.
It did feel a little fast. I had the same thought. I mean, I believed that he could get there, but I felt like I didn't get to see enough of the build up to that, because it seemed like I think it seemed like a quick turn. I think that could have been solved even by just showing more of him in the wedding feast scene. I mean, I guess that maybe it's a bit of a like diversion of like, you're not supposed to expect him to snap because you want it to be a exciting, snappy reveal that he's killing Joffrey. But I didn't really buy that was happening because it felt really rushed.
I agree. But if we, like, looking back today and trying to make sense of it and chart the character progression we do have for this guy, who's definitely, you know, B tier when we get to see him, I think the preamble to this turn is that scene with Rhaenyra. And like Criston's and his wide-eyed, you know, declaration of love for Rhaenyra, we know her better than he does. We see that it sells her on Uncle Daemon. Like during this private proposal from Criston, she is detached and uncomfortable versus Daemon during her wedding to someone else. I mean, there's just like foreplay on the dance floor.
That scene was so unhinged.
Yeah, that was nuts.
But
it was so fun.
And we see that sort of break his brain and his code of ethics, and just his understanding of the world sort of shatters. And I was trying to understand why this guy attacks Joffrey.
Yes, that was the most confusing part. Like, why not Daemon? Or, I mean, maybe not Rhaenyra, but why not Daemon or even Laenor? Like, why Joffrey? It
reminded me of a scene from The Departed, if you remember. It's the scene at the bar when the guy's explaining to Leonardo DiCaprio's character, there are some guys you can hit and some guys you can't hit.
Okay.
And if you were to make a list of all of the people that Criston Cole would want to kill right now, it's Rhaenyra, maybe Alicent, probably Daemon, maybe Viserys, and they are all insulated, untouchable royalty. And, like you said, Tristan, attacking them would further stain his white cloak.
But I mean, Daemon is pretty. He's been banished like 45 times.
But he's still royalty.
Yeah.
Like when this,
I just don't think anybody would be that mad.
But when this peon walks up to him and starts just mocking his entire position. Like, it totally makes sense after the conversation with Rhaenyra that Criston would be openly resentful of someone like Joffrey Lonmouth, who has chosen to be that whore to royalty.
Yeah, he's totally fine just supplicating and just living in Criston's mind, without honor, right?
And that's his reputation. Like, the Knight of Kisses thing that means that's all anyone knows about him. But I think maybe the fear in Criston's eyes is that guy walking over and mocking him for this means that he has to assume everyone in court now knows this rumor and scandal and his total reputation ruin.
And it makes him it makes him the same.
Yes.
It makes him the same as this, dishonorable guy who has this name for who, he doesn't even know why, right? In his mind. I mean, he's worthless, right? In Criston's mind. Who we know is a good warrior and is honorable despite being a moron.
Do you think there's a slight, and I don't know, do you think there's a slight homophobia angle? Like, he seeing Joffrey as this like gay whore, essentially, in his mind, he doesn't want to be, I'm just saying, he doesn't want to be like equated with that if that's not what his...
It certainly could be.
What his vision of honor is.
I mean, definitely, because... it's hard. No, it's just you kind of like skip points here.
I'm sorry.
So the other question I was rolling in is why doesn't anyone stop Criston from beating this guy to death? Because it takes a while. Maybe they're lost in the melee of people dancing. There are multiple comments about how overstuffed this hall is. And once the fight starts and they drop to the ground and everyone's panicking, it all gets busier and harder to see. And we see that like Secret Service Kingsguard activate and they scoop up Rhaenyra real quick. So they're dealing with the principal.
Of course.
No one is going to be looking for Joffrey Lonmouth except Laenor, and even that takes a while.
Right.
But to your point about homophobia, we've seen Corlys in this episode just dismiss his son's sexuality as a phase.
Yeah.
I imagine that opinion is shared amongst definitely members of the Kingsguard.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, look at the optics, right? These are all people who have just come here. They know, so most of them probably don't know who this guy is if he's just the consort of the son of a prominent lord, right? But they know the Red Keep. They know that the Kingsguard protects the royal family. If this guy is attacking another person, there's probably a reason for it.
That's true.
Right? So I was thinking about that earlier too. It's like, why don't they, there are so many high priority targets that they need to make sure are protected, like we got to see with Rhaenyra, that everyone's thinking about themselves and their own loved ones and stuff. And this is the Kingsguard doing his job, probably, right?
Well, yeah, they probably thought, like, oh, he's taken down, like, he was the one attacking. He's taken him down.
And we know that weddings are notorious for that kind of shit. So if you're there and in the moment, you're like, yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting, because when we were watching it, I knew what he was doing was wrong. But no one else did. Like, my question was, how could this guy escape this obvious crime he just committed and walk out into the Godswood? But, I mean, if you look at the Kingsguard as, like, cops or Secret Service, if a cop starts attacking someone, the other cops are probably going to assume he's pursuing some sort of crime.
Right, so they're not worried about it.
So maybe no one except Laenor probably will ever know that this guy that Joffrey didn't instigate this.
Especially if Joffrey has this kind of reputation and perhaps there's like a homophobic element among all of the Kingsguard. Like, I mean, that's a broad assumption, but who was going to be more believed? A knight of the Kingsguard or this random guy who
And so that is a great transition into the role that Alicent is now playing with Criston.
Okay.
We sort of skipped over the part in the middle where he confesses to the wrong crime, right? I think we maybe mentioned that, but like,
so painful.
she's in there questioning him. She's kind of nervous herself. She doesn't know how to do this, so she's sort of stumbling through, questioning whether or not she doesn't want to be impolite, but she wants to know whether or not Uncle Daemon is screwing his niece, right? And so she broaches all of that, and then he has such a guilty conscience that it just sort of all flows out of him. He has to say it, and then she puts two and two together and realizes, oh my God, this is so much different than what I thought, but maybe it's not as bad. I'm not sure what she thinks in that moment. Maybe you guys can unpack that a little bit in a second.
I think what... Well, sorry, do you have more to say?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I got excited.
I'm sorry, Maggie.
No, keep going.
So, may I? No. So all of this comes out. It's sort of like a comedy of errors. And the whole time I'm watching this, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe you've just done this. But he literally asks for death.
I know.
In his mind, he's a dead man. So by the time we get to the wedding, who God knows what he's thinking about, like before that happens. But if he literally has nothing to lose, this is nothing. This is a non-highborn guy who's just being a pissant to him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he's probably...
Why not?
He's probably worried that, like, Alicent is gonna... He doesn't think he's off the hook. He probably thinks she's gonna tell somebody.
I wouldn't.
Right.
I would think that's gonna get out somewhere else. So he's like, I'm good as dead anyway. Might as well act on my feelings. So he does all of this stuff, and he's about to go off himself because he feels like he should anyway, because now that he's living in dishonor, he doesn't deserve to be alive. But then Alicent comes out there and says, but wait.
Yeah.
So we've already seen step 1 of her ascension into the Game of Thrones. This is step 2. This is a queen acquiring a pawn. Because now that she knows his secret, he's going to develop some sort of affinity or he's going to owe her. He's going to feel like he owes her,
yes.
and will de facto pledge fealty to her, I think.
Yeah.
And who knows where that's going to go, but she is the reason I think we see him recover from this and maybe get out in the way that we were thinking of, like where he's just a Kingsguard doing his job, and that's why he had to kill this man. So that's going to be very interesting to see how that relationship plays out, especially because we've already seen essentially one betrayal in Rhaenyra's eyes coming from Alicent. Marrying her father. And now she's going to turn another person who was a staunch ally and lover, right? Deeper than just a friend.
Right.
We're going to see that turn as well. So it's only going to further sour things between Rhaenyra and Alicent.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be bad.
Oh, no.
No.
Oh.
No, good.
No, we were calling Alicent as like a dark horse, and I think that horse is at a gallop now.
Yes.
I love the idea of the queen having this pawn. I also loved the scene with Otto. He was only in here for one scene this week as he was leaving King's Landing.
Yeah.
But as we go to the time jump, it's confirmed now that this next episode is starting after the time jump. We're not going to see the young actresses again. We're moving forward. If there is some sort of shadow government of Rhaenyra is presumably heir, we'll talk about whether or not Viserys is dead later. If Rhaenyra is queen and Alicent is in the back trying to squirrel some sort of shadow government to take over, it feels like the way she parts with Otto here, they're almost allies instead of being father-daughter. So maybe she's got some sort of rook or castle with her too, if she's building up this team.
Right, yeah. I mean, I think what the big thing that we see happen with Alicent here, I mean, she's still very unknown. I still don't know what her game is or what she's thinking, and I really like that about her because she's hard to read. She feels simultaneously the most transparent and like sneaky character on the show. Yeah. Like I can't figure her out, even though she seems very honest in many ways. But I think what really happens with her in that scene with Criston is that I don't think she cares so much that Criston Cole like broke his oath. Like I'm sure there's a part of her that's like upset on like an honor level of like, oh, you're not supposed to do that. But what really upsets her is that Rhaenyra lied to her. Like that's the problem. And because Rhaenyra swore, I'm still a maiden, like I didn't do anything.
On her dead mother.
On my dead mother, right? Who she knows was very important to her. And so I think the reason that she sort of pairs up with Criston at the end is they can share this, they have this shared experience of being scorned by Rhaenyra. So they can sort of be this like allied team. I mean, I think she's gonna use Criston. But
he won't see that because by his standard, she's the only morally pure person. Because she hasn't reneged on any sort of deal. She hasn't betrayed anyone publicly.
Right.
So now he can idolize her in the same way he used to be able to do Rhaenyra. But
Right.
if I love these two ways of viewing him in this moment. One, him killing Joffrey almost has this abuse of power, like we're talking about with this sort of cop metaphor. The other example, because he is such an inwardly moral person, he's talking about his code and the only thing he has and his sense of honor, not even how he's perceived, but how he thinks of himself. When I was watching the episode the first time, I saw him throwing his life away when he attacks Joffrey Lonmouth for the first time.
Yeah.
I saw that as suicidal an action for him as what he does later in the Godswood, because in his mind, he knows that was unjust and that he's causing some scene and breaking his oath at a royal wedding.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to read this guy, and I really hope he remains on the board. I don't
Sure.
want him to become one of Alicent's pawn in the shadows for a season and a half.
Yeah.
I want to see more of this emotional turmoil now.
Yeah,
Do you think we will?
I think so. It seems like they're really going to be working together. Again, I don't think, well, maybe he's going to be pretty honest with her, but I don't think she's going to be super honest with him and her goals, but I think we'll get to see him be an active participant because he kind of gets a second chance because he doesn't actually die here.
Yeah, no, I think what we've seen with Alicent is a very, very expedited Sansa transformation.
Sure.
Because that's the vibe that I got. She feels like she's a rebel. She's got to find ways to sort of fight back within her means, right? As a, big air quotes, as a woman in the in Westeros right now. And we've seen her get her Littlefinger moment with the cripple guy in the Godswood.
Yeah.
What is his name?
I don't know.
His last name is Strong. I forgot the
Right.
first name, but the last name is Strong, which is the same name,
Yeah.
same family as the
new
Viserys' cousin, who's the new hand. Exactly.
Right.
And the guy who carries Rhaenyra out of the crowd.
So that's his
Yes.
allegiance, presumably.
Okay.
They're
Yeah,
all like
yeah.
brothers or
And we
nephews
met
or whatever.
him during the hunt. He was on. I was wondering where in the hell did we see this guy before? Why is he all of
Oh,
a
the
sudden on screen?
hunt. Okay.
He was there at the table of women at the hunt.
Oh, right.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So it wasn't totally unfounded. I was upset by that at first. I was like, how are you just going to throw this new character at us? And
Okay.
he has something important to do.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
that's where he came from. That's
We're
where he was
just dumb.
introduced.
Okay.
And so that was a great moment because she's starting to play the Littlefinger Varys game of thinly veiled metaphors and half truths, and sort of a dog whistle thing, where only she's gonna know what he's really trying to tell her. And that was interesting too. I was a little upset by that initially because just knowing that a potion was sent to the room by the maester, maybe she knows that because maybe off screen she's asked for it because she didn't want to pump out another heir or something.
Maybe.
I don't
Interesting.
know.
Maybe every time.
Yeah.
But
If she's
yeah,
not ready every time, she just asks for one. Yeah.
But it could be that she could also just be putting two and two together. But if that's the case, Rhaenyra would have also probably lied to the king, Viserys, about it the same way that she lied to Alicent. And so to make that logical jump, I don't know that I believed it, but really, once we saw the rest of the episode, it was just a vehicle to get her and Criston Cole in the same place, so that she could verify.
Yeah.
Right. Again, it was just another piece for her to dig deeper into and question. So maybe that didn't immediately make her know. It just made her more curious.
Yeah, I think the T was like she was like, I gotta check this out.
Because we saw Rhaenyra swear up and down to Viserys that nothing happened, and then the episode ends with him
He
sending
sends it
the tea
anyway. He's like, let's just be
so
extra careful.
Alicent is almost hedging in the same way Viserys did.
Sure, yeah. The Sansa comparison is interesting because I agree that that's there, but there's also this element of Cersei.
Oh my God, I was thinking the same
my
thing.
God.
It's like a combination. That's
in
incredible.
the way that everything she does is to protect her children. So she goes, big old like Mama Lion, right? Like doing anything to protect her kids. Like that's one of her biggest motivators. And so Alicent is doing the same thing here after her conversation with Otto about making sure that like he says that if you're gonna have to, if you stick by Rhaenyra, you will have to kill your children because otherwise there will be all this disagreement about the succession. So it's like this fun combination which I'm really enjoying.
It's a great remix without having any like clean successor characters. There's no Jon Snow. There's no Tyrion. Daemon is his own thing with elements of 4 different characters.
Oh, yeah.
It's. I mean, at every episode here, it's the writing, and the writing is just as thoughtful as you could possibly want.
Totally.
I want to jump to Daemon, who we haven't really talked about this episode.
Daemon.
Last week we talked about, and this was mostly Tristan's theory, the Daemon and impotence that we talked about. And I took some of the segments from last week and I cut them into YouTube videos. By the way, we're on YouTube now. I made that announcement on our Substack last week, but now it's public for everyone. So we'll link the YouTube channel in the episode description, and that'll be all there. And I pulled my point about Macbeth, which I have more on in a minute. I pulled our sort of communal point on Daemon and impotence, and our first discussion about Alicent as a dark horse. So we've sort of made progress on all fronts so far. But on that YouTube video about Daemon and impotence, we have a comment, which I was going to clean up the language of, but it's more fun to just read.
All right. Who was this comment from?
Not lol.
All right.
Like LOL.
No, I got it.
Okay, so the comment on last week's conversation about Daemon's impotence before we get to this week's new evidence is, I also think he couldn't physically do the sex. And got mad, and that's why they didn't finish, leaving her all hot and bothered. I don't brother that he did have sex with her despite not doing so, not only to humiliate Viserys, but because the deed shields the impotency that he's so ashamed of, which is what I think causes the control issues of which y'all spake. Which probably leads...
I like the old English.
It's frantic, the writing style, which probably leads to more impotency, sexual or otherwise, a vicious cycle, and all that.
That's great.
All right.
Of which y'all spake. Thank you
Ye
so
old
much.
hot take.
Thank you, not lol.
Ye old do the sex.
The more that this show continues, the more I feel dumb for not recognizing Daemon's impotence earlier. Like, I mean, it becomes so apparent here at the very beginning with Rhea.
Rest in peace, Daemon's wife,
that
who
was...
claims that they never consummated.
And she said, "I knew you couldn't finish." Good for her.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god. And you know what? Yet again, when we see Daemon fly off the handle, we don't actually see him fly off the handle. We just know that it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the thing that pushes him to that point? A woman being assertive and dominant. Yeah. So he's walking away, and then she goads him, so he brains her with a rock. But there's an uneasy echo later from that opening scene to his interaction with Rhaenyra, because I'm wondering, as this relationship progresses, when he will turn on her. And I caught this echo later when Rhaenyra is absolutely the sexual aggressor pursuing Daemon, goading him into eloping with her and taking her away to Dragonstone right now to marry her.
Now, do we think that was real?
I think she was messing with
actually
him.
meant that? Yeah, I feel like she was like flirting with him.
I think
like,
she kind of
I know you wouldn't do that.
I think she half wants him to do it, but it was more of a like a teasing challenge.
But how's his brain going to take that? Because she's settling into that aggressor role. And he's not okay with that.
Especially in the old Valyrian. I love that is only for them.
I love that. I think that's so fun. I'm
so,
really enjoying that.
How will that dynamic play out? If we see them in the next episode and it's been 10 years, they will presumably have settled into a dynamic. Do you think it's going to be more equal? Is it going to be one? Is the power dynamic going to be clearly tilted in one of them's favor?
I think it'll be more equal because Rhaenyra is only getting older and more confident.
But he doesn't like that.
So I think it's already unbalanced in favor of Rhaenyra, and it's only going to become, I think, more of an imbalance the longer she goes being the heir and the closer she gets to actually taking over the throne. But I don't know how long, you broached the subject a second ago, when will he turn on Rhaenyra? I don't know how long he can take actually playing second fiddle again to another relative, this time even worse because they're screwing each other.
Right.
And it's like, it wouldn't even matter if they did end up together, because the second they have a kid, that kid has claim to the throne more than Daemon does.
Right.
So it doesn't, so he's just kind of, he's screwed no matter what.
But that balance of him being the most loud and aggressive and rebellious member of the family, and the number of scenes we have where he's absolutely silent. Mm-hmm. He barely talks in this episode. He talks in the beginning, and then he has one or two lines when he's talking about his wife's land and property. But most of this episode, again, he's silent. I love that for this guy who is so extroverted and has this impotence problem. I love that the performance almost lives that for us in every episode.
Sure.
Because it gives us evidence in both directions that we can talk about every week.
Who would have thought? Do you think Matt Smith woke up one day and said, "You know what? I'm going to get typecast into the role of an impotent husband serving as a consort for a queen, getting literally crown cucked for the second series in a row."
That's really funny. Poor
And
guy.
he's so good at it.
He's doing so well. Yeah.
I love every second. But
Oh yeah. Well, and these Philip is such a different character from Daemon, obviously. Right. But yeah, it is really funny that he's got that in common.
So
yeah.
I want to follow up for a second on the Macbeth theory that we talked about last week. I was talking about this idea of a floating Banquo, where we've got Viserys as Macbeth trying to interpret these prophecies, and then there's that second character, that lieutenant to Macbeth, who gets his own prophecy about bearing future kings, and that difference between their prophecies, one of them will be king, one of them will have future kings, that tears them apart ultimately. And I was saying that Banquo in this story is sort of a floating identity that can land on whoever Viserys is most suspicious of trying to take his throne from him. We decided last week that Otto was sort of the best character to embody Banquo at this point. But Otto's gone now. He's dispatched in this
I
episode.
wonder where he went.
an actual ghost.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we're following the chronology of Macbeth, the play, the next thing we move on to, and I guessed this last week and I was happy to be right, is the ghost of Macbeth. So for context, the ghost of Banquo.
Oh, okay.
This is a scene where Macbeth has a bunch of nobles gathered and he's giving a speech during a dinner, and he keeps getting interrupted by Banquo's ghost. And he's just had Banquo killed and killed his sons. And the ghost keeps entering and sitting at all the unoccupied chairs around a table. And I wrote this in my notes. Well, looky here. Old Cam isn't a raving lunatic after all.
That is an incredible thing to point out.
That's fun.
We've got two Banquo ghost entrances in this episode. Both enter during a feast, interrupt Viserys, and sit at a very important empty seat at the table. Daemon and Alicent, both possible betrayers with claims to that Banquo prophecy. Daemon, because if he seduces Rhaenyra and possibly has kids with her, that undermines and threatens the succession line. And Alicent, because she literally gave birth to Aegon, the direct challenge to Viserys' chosen successor. But in the play, Macbeth only survives this ghost freakout scene because Lady Macbeth covers for him and saves him from the embarrassment. The twist, the remix in this show is that Lady Macbeth is part of the problem.
Yes, she is Banquo.
So it all just gets worse, and this episode ends with a Macbeth collapse. We see Viserys hit the floor for the second time in this episode.
Poor guy.
And if we're tracking that Macbeth comparison through to the end of the story, it's an open war for succession that ends in him getting beheaded. And I think by the end of this episode, when Alicent enters in that green dress and she draws the battle lines for the schism in the Targaryen family, she has started that war. And I don't know if that Viserys collapse is fatal, but as a parallel to Macbeth, closing out this fifth episode with basically the overtures of Act 5 of Macbeth wraps it up neatly in a nice little bow.
That's a really great
That's
observation.
Awesome.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like that was the inspiration for real. I mean, I think that's the nail on the head. That's too similar to not have been intentional. But I also really like, we're talking about the ghosts entering empty chairs. Notice that Daemon's chair was only there because Viserys ordered it done. That chair wasn't at the table.
Yeah, he was he pointed to a servant. He was like, ugh.
Until he gave the okay. And even though he didn't maybe want to do it, and maybe he was just doing it to save face and avoid the embarrassment of having to unpack all that family drama right there, it was still him again capitulating to Daemon.
I know, because he could have just said like, "No, you don't get to be here. Leave."
Well, there was no place for him without Viserys saying, "Okay."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. He literally, he doesn't exist without sort of the endorsement of Viserys. So I think that plays in really nicely with the point that you were just making.
And I don't know if Viserys is dead. So we're going into the time jump next week where 10 years-ish are going to have passed. If Viserys is still alive 10 years from what we just saw, he's going to be a leg and a crown.
Oh my God,
there's
no
nothing
way.
left of this guy.
Oh my God.
And
his arm looks like browning meat.
Oh God, so gross.
You know when you have like a slab, I mean, I know Maggie, you haven't eaten meat for a while, but like if you ever like brown like a pound of ground beef or something, when you when you first put it down on the side and then you flip it and you've got to like cook the rest of it, that side that was on the burner first gets a weird, sickly, light brown color. That is what this man's arm looked like.
Yeah.
It was nasty.
And, like, if he is alive, he's going to be a mess. But if he's dead, if you, like, count up his dialogue through this episode, he spends almost all of his screen time navel-gazing about legacy. Like, this is what Shakespearean leaders do in their final scenes. So as much as I want this guy to be on the show for 3 seasons, I know that can't happen. I just love watching Petty Considine. Do we think Viserys is dead?
Well, that was the thing. Because, like, on Game of Thrones, unless you see the character's dead body, they might still be alive. So I thought it was weird that they just ended it with a collapse if we're about to move into this 10-year time jump.
So, do you guys watch the little preview at the end of the episodes?
No, I don't like to see. I like to go in blind.
I see.
So don't say
Cheater.
anything.
I won't say
Cheater.
anything. Well, do you guys watch the sort of post interview?
No.
Nope.
Or you don't watch that?
I'll
either?
watch those when we're done with the season because I love hearing that stuff. But they tend to reveal too much in there, and it makes me mad.
Yeah. Okay, I got you.
Sorry.
So it's a good rule to set for us moving forward because your boy has been watching the previews.
I'm sure you have.
So it's so funny because like you guys will say these things sometimes, and I'm like, oh, I totally know. Like, I can answer this right now, but I've been like playing dumb because I'm just like, clearly they haven't watched this
No,
yet.
thank you. No, because the thing is, I don't need hype. I'm gonna watch the episode next week, so you don't need to get me excited.
Yeah.
So I like to go in without knowing much. But so is it? I guess it's revealed.
So you know the answer to that question.
I know the answer to this question.
Everyone
I'm going to
else
say one way or the other.
Screaming at us. Okay, great.
But yeah, just know, audience, know that I'm with you.
I am not dumb.
We have one smart host.
It is they who are dumb.
So
I'm actually the three-eyed raven of this show.
Got it.
the 3-eyed TikTok star.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe if we watch the 5-minute post thing, then we would also be TikTok famous.
That's
Maybe
right, Maggie.
That's how it has to
So
work.
to follow up on 2 other little things that we're kind of trying to,
That was really condescending. I don't think you needed to do that.
Yeah, it was kind of fun though. I think the audience at home
I
enjoyed
didn't
it.
have
If you
fun.
thought it was funny and Maggie deserved to be put in her
being
place,
attacked.
Second Breakfast Pod at Gmail, Substack, Instagram, and TikTok.
Oh, okay.
The Marble Mystery,
Subgram,
Maggie.
Instamail. Okay.
That's the Substack poll this week, folks. Whether or not Maggie has given her subsequent
I
actions,
dumb?
whether or not Maggie deserved what just came her way.
Did anyone spot any new evidence for the Marble Mystery?
No, there was no council meeting whatsoever. I was upset.
I'm pissed.
But Fire and Blood, oh boy, there was both of those.
Really?
Yeah, Cam.
Would you like to spell that out?
Well,
for
there
the
was
audience at
blood in
home?
the wedding when Mr. Joffrey was squished,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was fire with all the torches and shit at the wedding.
I know
Candles.
we're desensitized to violence in this world, but what bothered you more? Seeing what was left of Joffrey's face or not seeing what Daemon did to his wife?
Well, I would have said not seeing Rhea's death, but there was something really unsettling about how soft Joffrey's face became. It was like it was cavernous. I had never I'm pretty chill with gore. Now bones kind of freak me out, but blood and stuff, I'm like, oh, cool.
It was kind of Mountain and the Viper.
But that one was
I was
ugh.
gonna say Mountain and the Viper was still worse. To me.
Yeah, that was worse. But I did like the choice to not show Rhea and to instead cut to the fish being decapitated and then hearing about her death from someone else. That was really effective, and again, makes sense with what we've been saying about Daemon.
Tristan,
and what
did
we
it remind you? Did it remind you of Cliff Booth?
Yes. Oh my God.
Just
Just right there the whole time, just harpoon pointed directly at her. It would be so easy. Do we think he did it? Huh.
Yeah.
Also, to sort of underline it, incest watch for this week, we have a love triangle with a woman caught between her uncle and cousin.
You know, when you put it that way, nice segue into her cousin's family. Interesting arrival of the royal party to the Velaryon's keep.
What was that about?
For them to not receive him, but more than that, for Corlys to be sitting on his throne.
I know.
Beautiful throne, too.
I loved that. I know that was he was trying so hard to assert himself, but not to a degree where he'd, get executed. Because he was just like, that's a great compromise, my king.
Well, he was super excited at the prospect of the next king being named Velaryon.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
And then Viserys was like,
and Tristan,
pump the brakes.
Yeah.
Tristan, you've been pointing out for a few weeks that we haven't gotten much Rhaenys.
Yeah.
There was a lot more of her
back
this week. I love that relationship between her and Corlys.
Me too.
And not only did we get more, it was also very nuanced. It wasn't like, oh, this is clearly a villain. This is clearly someone who has love for her husband and her family and wants to do things the right way. She says she no longer cares about not being queen, right?
Yeah, she's like, I moved past that.
And so I have a lot more respect for Rhaenys now, and it's sort of it provides a new lens through which to see her original interaction with Rhaenyra, because that sounded at the time really impetuous. It sounded like she was just jealous about everything. But now, we kind of see she has all of these concerns about secession and everything like that, and maybe she was just being real.
Yeah,
she was just saying what Otto is in an old town, and from the players that we saw last week, seemingly the public thinks about Rhaenyra's claim to the throne,
right? That
they will never accept her, and so I have a lot more respect for Rhaenys now, and I'm interested to see where her character goes, and especially now that Laenor and Laena are going to be integral parts, I think, of the show moving forward. I think we'll get to see more of her, and I'm very interested to see if she proves to be a good counsel and a fair counsel to her children, especially because everyone's like, Rhaenys should have been queen. Is it because she was better suited to the role, and are we going to get to see her sort of flex those muscles sort of from the background?
Yeah, because she seems pretty like she would do a pretty good job, especially compared to Viserys, who's kind of he's just a bit less assertive than she is, and so it seems like the only reason she was denied was because she is a woman. It wasn't because he was the better candidate. So that's So
do we think if in the upcoming schism, if it's Alicent versus Rhaenyra, do we think the Velaryons will be on Rhaenyra's side?
I think they'll have to be if their son is married to her.
So it's dependent on that marriage?
I guess so.
The marriage between Laenor and Rhaenyra is going to be extremely tenuous now, because it's all started by her lover killing his, and that was like the one thing that gave them rapport with one another.
Yeah.
They're friendly. they're friendly and everything. But like the reason why it's going to work is because they get to still have the people that they actually love in the wings, right? But now that sort of this ultimate betrayal coming from somebody who is, Team Rhaenyra, he's going to equate that with Rhaenyra essentially being the cause of that death.
That's true. Because it's not just that he doesn't like women. It's that he was in love with a specific person, and that person is now dead pretty much because of her. So, yeah. Oh, that's sad.
And so that bodes ill for the rest of the time, and I'm curious to see if the Velaryons have their own sort of designs for the throne. But I will say, we got a real Dance of Dragons.
I know. I said that out loud when we were watching. Like,
them miming the flying and the wings and stuff, and it was
so
very cool.
Beautiful.
It was the fantasy version of Mr. Darcy and Lizzie dancing at that one scene. I'm just saying.
Well,
the
I really
music
liked
was so
it.
cool.
I was not only was it cool, I was also rooting for them in that moment because it was awesome. It was like, oh, okay, so these people like each other, they get along, they're gonna get what they need out of this, and maybe they'll be a good pair. They seem to have good chemistry together.
It would have worked, and then
yeah,
They're both dragon riders. They have things in common.
sure, and then they have lots of relatives in common. But then didn't work out. I know. I'm at the point where now, like after all that, and then seeing the incredibly intense interaction between Rhaenyra and Daemon, they're both so messed up and terrible that I'm just kind of like, if they make each other happy, then good for them. You go for it, guys. Yeah. It's gross, but hey.
Oh, I agree. It's all I want to see now.
It's all I want to see.
I just want to say this is like episode 3 or 4 of Maggie
being pro-incest,
actively advocating for the incest. See, we are just reporting, all right? This is not an opinion-based news source from Cam and I. Maggie is hardcore team incest.
If you ask the rest of the internet, they are also team Rhaenyra and Daemon. So.
The internet is perhaps not the best cultural barometer.
What, you mean like, what is it? No lol? Not lol?
Yeah, the guy.
And I'm not making fun of him. He's very fun. I just liked how unhinged the writing was. It was a great comment. Thank you so much.
So do we have any more points?
I don't think so. I should probably shut up.
I think we hit the nail on the head.
Yeah,
honestly,
absolutely.
On this one.
I'm proud of us.
It was a lot slower than last week's. Blowout. Last 2 weeks have been pretty exciting episodes.
Oh, I will say, I forgot earlier, Tristan, at the beginning of the episode, you mentioned that it felt like things. You mentioned about you were kind of tricked the way that Game of Thrones tricked you into thinking it was going to go a certain way, and then it went a totally different way. That was how that helped me kind of understand how I was feeling about Rhea and Joffrey, who were these new characters that we met this episode, and I wanted more from, and I was like frustrated that we didn't get to see very much of them. I thought they were kind of wasted, but then I just thought, well, that's how life is. People sometimes die before you get to know them well enough. So of course, and that's the way this show works. Of course that makes sense, that you meet someone at the beginning of an episode and 4 minutes later they're dead. So yeah, makes total sense. So
and we've seen so much of that senseless death already. It hasn't been. We haven't really talked about it that much, but I mean between the tournament early on, episode 1, we
and
saw
the Queen.
And then we saw. Well, whenever I say I'm talking about the senseless violence.
Oh,
it's just out of nowhere, right? Hers was sort of harrowing because there's always risks involved with pregnancy and stuff.
Yeah.
But like the tournament and then the marriage proposals where that child literally just kills a Baratheon.
That's right.
just cause we didn't really address that. But
I like that kid.
He's just super dead.
And
now we see it with these 2 new characters who were maybe supposed to be a little more prominent. We're falling back into that pattern of, oh shit, the gloves are off, and we're no longer seeing this fun hero's journey of Rhaenyra sort of growing into her role and showing that she's got potential and like winning out and proving herself to be worthy. Now we're like, okay, that's done. You see that she's the real deal. Let me get you back into this world. Let me remind you of where you are.
Yeah,
she's not a cupbearer anymore.
No, not at all.
Yeah, and I have no idea what's going to come next.
Nope.
I'm so excited for next week. I can't wait to meet the older cast. And I mean, if we're out of Macbeth, then I don't know what the hell I'm going to add next week to this discussion.
Well, King Lear, I guess.
It's a Faust story.
Well, we've already discussed this. We got Daemon as the demon, so there's that.
Yeah.
No. Well, I mean,
really, if you look at it, there are a lot of demons.
Cam, have you read or seen King Lear?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Okay, well then do that next time.
Yeah, I'll play with that.
Okay, great.
Cool.
Do your thing. Do a dance.
Do your thing,
monkey.
cuz. All right.
All right, we already did the plugs. We're Second Breakfast Pod everywhere, Substack, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Gmail. Reach out to us with your thoughts. We'll be back on Friday with the next penultimate chapter in the Witcher book, The Time of Contempt, and then we'll be back again on Tuesday with episode 6 of House of the Dragon. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Tristan. Oh, this is so much fun. This is such a good show.